Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Mental Health Moments, with your host, Charity Wabuki. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist with a practice in Southern California. And each week, we will be talking about all things mental health to help reduce the stigma around mental health, provide practical daily tools for you to use, and help you live the best version of your life. So get ready to rise up, level up, and achieve new heights. If this sounds good to you, let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mental Health Moments. And today I'm super excited because for the month of September, I have something really special for y'all. So September is known as National Recovery Month. And so throughout the month, I'm going to have different guests talking about their personal journey with recovery, as well as mental health and all the things. And so to kick us off, super excited to have Joey Hinzo, aka Woes, and we go way back. And Joey has been
Hey,
gracious enough to come on and have a conversation with us about addiction and mental health. So welcome, Joey.
thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you, Charity?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And I'm super excited, just to get into it, Joey, and just thank you for being really gracious and generous with your time today. And, without further ado, let's get into it. Sounds good?
Let's get into it.
All right. So, Joey, just starting off, just kind of would love to hear your thoughts on how would you define addiction and what are some common misconceptions that people might have about addiction?
I think that a lot of people that aren't as familiar with addiction tend to think there's much more choice involved. And that's something that I kind of learned the hard way over a long period of time. When I was young, my father, he was an alcoholic, right? Um, He was sober by the time he passed away. He was sober for 40 some odd years. And when I was a kid, I didn't know him as a drunk because he had already gotten sober. Um, but he would explain to me, like, hey, I know that you're like out having fun, experimenting and stuff. I just want you to know we have a family history.
Mhm,
If you ever feel like you need to talk or anything like that, I'm always here for you.
mhm,
That was his approach. He didn't try to shame me or um, put restrictions on me or anything. He just let me know that he was there. And at the time, I didn't really get it, and I was just like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, of course, yeah, it's all good. Don't worry about it." And then over time, I came to realize, oh, it's like this secret hidden chest that was in my DNA that I didn't really fully understand. And so progressively, as I continued drinking as I got older, that chest was open up. And so, I started realizing the depths and darkness that come along with that. That coupled with smoking. Now, for me, alcohol wasn't so much of a thing where I would wake up and I had a bottle by the side of my bed and had a handshake or something like that. It was just something I regularly did like throughout the week. But cigarette smoking has been honestly my biggest addiction, my biggest problem. And to be completely legitimately honest with you, I'm sitting in front of you right now, 7 days off of the patch,
okay.
which is like incredible for me because I've been trying to quit smoking for, I would say, the last 6 years.
Okay.
Um, but the thing about addiction is once it's opened up inside of you, you now have to feed it. You have to feed this beast, or the beast won't be happy.
Mhm.
So when I'm actively smoking cigarettes, if I don't smoke a cigarette, I can get upset, I can get angry, stressed out, anxious, have all these emotions. And so as we were growing up, we would watch movies or TV shows, and people would smoke cigarettes to relax or whatever.
Mhm.
But that wasn't them relaxing. That was them feeding that beast to keep
The
it
beast.
from grabbing at them
Yeah.
because it needs to be fed. It needs to be fed, and it always needs to be fed. And so you know, being 13 years sober now from alcohol and still battling against cigarette addiction. Constant reminder that, you know, I'm not in the free and clear. There is no free and clear. You know what I mean? You always have to stay conscious of where you're at with your body, with your health, and where you're heading. So, yeah, I think the main thing that people don't realize is that it's not always just a self-control thing. It is a disease, and people need help, whether that's in the form of mentors, relationships, religion, whatever that's going to be. People quite often need help.
Right. So good, Joey. And, I really appreciate what you said about it's not a self-control thing, it's a disease. And I
Yeah,
think that was one of the biggest things, when I used to work in recovery centers, that parents would often tell their children, like, just practice self-control. It's not that hard. Just stop drinking or stop shooting up or taking that pill or, whatever that beast is or was, for those clients. And a lot of people really have a hard time conceptualizing that it's not just a matter of self-control. So I think that's great that you just even touched upon that like right now. And even as you're talking about like that opening of the chest, right? And how it's a constant day in and day out battle, and even though you've been sober from alcohol 13 years, and that's awesome, congratulations, but every
thank
single
you.
day it's a battle, right? And it's like the choices I'm making, is it continuing me on my path of recovery, or is it slowing it down, right? And so 7 days off the patch, big props up to you, and there's also even that mindset that I've come across with individuals where they don't think that cigarettes is an addiction because it's not as bad as, if it's heroin or coke or, getting blackout drunk. And so there's all of these
Right.
ideas. I'm just going to go with that word, ideas, that people have,
Sure.
when it comes to addiction and using. And so thank you for right off the bat, just talking about like what that looks like, in that world.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of people have like really genuinely don't understand. Like I have talked to multiple heroin addicts that have
mhm,
told me it's much easier to quit heroin than it is to quit smoking cigarettes. Like straight up.
really,
Um, yeah, absolutely. Cigarettes is, I mean, that's that's why the big uproar, that's why the big cultural shift. I mean, when I was growing up, okay, tell me, let's go a little walk down memory lane.
mhm.
When I was growing up, we would go to a restaurant and they would say, "Would you like to sit in smoking or non-smoking?" And then
Yes,
you look at the building and there's no divider, there's no fans or like different sort of
yes.
ventilation. It's just you're on one side of the room or the other side of the room, and there's smoke from one side of the room that's billowing over to
Oh,
the
it
other side
up.
of the room.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like airplanes. Every airplane you used to get on, you look at the little armrest and there's an ashtray in the armrest. They used to smoke on planes, Charity.
No,
Can you
I
believe
know.
this?
It's so
Oh
crazy.
my
You're
God.
probably dating us, Joey. I don't know how many of our listeners have been familiar with the smoking or no smoking section in restaurants, but oh my God, it's so true. It's so
And
true.
now I live in Henderson, but I work on the strip in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
And so Las Vegas is like, you know, one of the last bastions as far as like smoke friendly environments are concerned. But you know, when you go to California, it's like you got to stand 500 yards over there. They have these little tiny hidden little areas,
Yes.
which is good. You know what I mean? Like I grew up like hanging out at a cafe. Um, so like I can like I'm a smoker's smoker, all right? Like I grew up smoking cigarettes and playing chess or backgammon and
Mhm.
philosophizing and writing poetry and like you know what I mean? Like the cafe that I grew up at was like kind of like beatnik style, like, you know, that was like a vibe or whatever. But you know, if you don't know that in the first place, you won't ever miss it, right? So I'm glad to see that things have moved forward so that kids won't have to deal with what I'm dealing with, you know, now late in the game at the age of 46 trying to get my health together for Christ's sake. Jeez. But yeah, you know, I'm trying to translate. I'm trying right now, I'm actually going through like a big period of time where I'm trying to recall parts of my past and play them into my present. So for instance, like I've done the LA Marathon 10 times, right? Now I
Amazing.
did, thank you. I did the LA Marathon 10 times without ever training and as a smoker.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Yeah, not smart. Don't recommend it. So I've been, having some, I wouldn't say health scares. I would just say kind of like getting health checked.
Right.
Like, hey, health check. You better get this together, right? And so my second daughter's gonna be born, as we were talking about earlier, anytime now, right? And so
Congratulations.
now the onus is on, like, this is no longer just about me,
Right.
right? I can't just have a perspective of getting it together for myself. I have people that depend on me. I have two baby girls here that need me as their father to be around as long as I possibly can. So now I'm in the zone of where every single night I'm doing at least a 3 mile walk. I try to get a
Okay.
little jogging in there too.
Okay.
I also go out on bike rides, sometimes a combination of both. So, and it's just like, I'll be sitting there on the couch watching TV or something, and I'm tired. I don't want to. And then we have to do this.
Right.
It's a part of the routine now. It has to happen. So I'm trying to approach it like that, and fortunately, it's been working. And particularly like coming off the patch, because when you first come off the patch for nicotine, you start feeling anxious and stuff like that. So it's good to be out there and
Moving.
and
Uh-huh.
get exercise that energy from your
Mhm.
body. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Absolutely. So, Joy, it sounds like you're talking a lot about a person's mindset. And
Yes.
for you, kind of share a little bit more about what your mindset has been towards recovery. And it's interesting because now you're talking about how it's not just about you, but you have one daughter and then another one that's on the way any day. So it's a higher stake for you, so to speak. So, what has
Yeah.
been your mindset towards recovery? But I guess let's start back a little bit. When did you make the choice to get sober? Like, what shifted in your mind? Where you're like, all right, I can't be drinking anymore.
So, particularly, I had a really kind of dark couple of years in my life. As you know, I'm an artist. And so, out doing shows every week, everywhere I go, there's free drinks,
Mhm.
lights, cameras, action. You kind of just can tend to get caught up in your own hype under those type of circumstances,
Mhm.
even when you're trying to do it on an underground conscious level or whatever. I got caught up in my own hype. And so I just got to a place where I wasn't proud of my behavior. I wasn't proud of the way I was presenting myself,
Mhm.
as someone that was allegedly a social activist, allegedly doing conscious music.
Mhm.
And then I'm out here not necessarily showing the most grace to women, not necessarily um, being the most appropriate person that I could be, just kind of walking around like God's gift. And so it was through the loss of one friendship in particular that I realized that this has to stop. This has to stop. I can't live my life like this. And so incidentally, um, initially, my first like skirt when the brakes got hit for me to get sober, it was based on guilt.
Really?
And yeah, it was based on guilt. And so then, okay, now I'm sober. But and another misconception that people have is like getting sober is just the starting point. You're not done. Like
Yeah.
that's just the very first starting point for you to now really go in and do the work,
Yeah.
right? So the last 13 years, it's like the universe has just been humbling me just like over and over again. And like a lot of that also came down to like a need for a quite a large ego death for me. Like, woes, you ain't the business, bro. Like, this ain't all about you. There's stuff way greater than you,
Mhm.
and you're fortunate to be here to contribute to it or to experience it.
Mhm.
If you're able to touch people's lives or to play some sort of a positive effect on people's lives, that's what's important. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And to be honest with you, that all culminated and led up to the birth of my first daughter. And she was born January 21st, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And then within 2 months, a global pandemic happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole process really is what transformed me into the person that's sitting here before you today. Like, and what's beautiful about that, and what I realized through that journey, is that there were certain mentors that I had at younger stages of my life that played like integral roles in my life. And they looked at me a certain way, and I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the way that they looked at me, because I was just like this loudmouth kid, you know, doing what he wants to do, saying all kind of ignorant stuff, blah 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 blah,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, right? But they saw something inside of me, and what they saw in me was the potential that I had to become what I am today.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
and so now I understand that. And
Yeah.
so, man, blessings to those folks that played that role in my life, that were simply just waiting for me to see it, waiting for me to figure it out.
Right. Right.
You know?
Beautiful. And we need people that can believe in us, even like when we can't believe in ourselves or when we can't see things inside of ourselves. But there's people that the universe, God, higher power, will put in our life for that purpose.
100%.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So, speaking of support systems and people, who would you
Yeah.
say was your biggest support in your journey of recovery?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got like, my descent to rock bottom was not pretty. It kind of had a mixture of like my second DUI and like
Mhm.
having to go to court and um, getting in fights at bars and just all this nonsense. And so, initially, right off the bat, my biggest support was my dad. And that was one of those things where he had dropped a seed way earlier,
Right,
and then light bulb, and I'm like, oh, this is what you were talking about.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. So then at that point, because prior to that, he didn't really speak to me very much about his experience. So
Mhm.
getting to speak with him and actually learn more about his experience, I even learned more about my dad's situation based on my situation, which was my dad, unfortunately, for him, he got sober and he started to do the work, but he stopped doing the work at some point.
Okay.
So my father's was what you call a dry drunk.
Okay.
And I didn't understand that growing up. There was all these problems we had at my home. My dad would pull up in the driveway. Me, my mom, my sister would scurry to try and disappear because we knew, ooh, dad's home and he just got out of traffic. He's probably going to be in a bad mood.
Hmm.
Like, I never understood, why is my dad always in a bad mood? What's
Hmm.
going on with my dad? Like, he was just getting angry, road rage, like all this stuff. And in hindsight, later on in life, I came to realize that, oh, he was a dry drunk. He hadn't addressed the trauma. There's always layers of trauma
Hmm.
underneath the layers of addiction. And in
Hmm.
most cases, we're using and utilizing the addiction to numb out the layers of trauma. My
Yes.
father had a traumatic life experience. He was born in poverty. His mom had 12 children. It was a hard knock life for them. Okay.
Hmm.
Like, talk about American dream. Like, they lived in squalor. My dad bust his hump, wound up with a good job at Paramount Studios in Hollywood, California, moved us
Hmm.
out to Claremont, got us
Hmm.
into the middle class, right? And now here I am trying to continue that torch with my daughter, you know, American dream, right? They say it's
Right.
not alive. It's still alive. American dream is still alive. Um, and so he never addressed the trauma. So every day the stuff that was being displayed by him, that was coming out of him, that he, unbeknownst to him, he wasn't even aware. This
Mm-hmm.
was simply just his trauma that he had intended to just acting out in his daily life.
Right.
So I'm very aware of that. I'm very conscious of that. So, that's why I'm staying still in therapy. I'm still working on myself. I
Mm-hmm.
still wake up every day with the mindset of self-improvement. How can I
Mm-hmm.
be better? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
minding my tonality, minding my anger and traumas that I have within my body. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean it's a long journey, but I think the most important thing is just being aware and being open and being mindful of trying to understand like the traumas that we carry within ourselves and how that can affect all those around us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you brought up 3 points and what you just shared, Joanne. I'd kind of like to unpack them a little bit.
Yeah,
So starting even with the concept of a dry drunk, because not everyone who's listening might not be familiar with that. So can you just explain a little bit more about what it means to be a dry drunk?
sure. So my father went from this rock star party, spotlight centered lifestyle, doing shows with, Richie Valens and Sam Cooke, and having their songs played on the radio and American Bandstand and all this stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then their music career, um, he was in a doo-wop group that was signed to Capitol Records, and their manager passed away from cardiac arrest. He had a heart attack, and so they lost their record deal. After that, everything just kind of do right. So he didn't have a backup plan. He didn't have money,
Mm-hmm.
um, but he had been partying or whatever. So now he had to figure out, all right, what do I do now to take care of my ever growing family, right? And so out of that, well, the answer was hard work, right? And as you see all across America, for sure, one of the things that kind of comes hand in hand with the working class is like, that transitions from party and rock star style to like hard day at work, and then, have a drink to unwind or relax or whatever. Um, so he kind of transitioned over to that style before actually getting sober. And I think the motivation for him to get sober was the family aspect, the fact that he was now raising children, the head of the household, responsible for the earnings and whatnot. But there was a degree of, I think, resentment
Mm-hmm.
that built up in him because he had to sacrifice all that glitz and glamour to be hard at work, to
Right.
go to sleep early, to wake up early, to
Right.
bring home the bacon for the family. And so to me, I haven't looked up like the clinical definition of the term dry drunk, but to me, a dry drunk is a person that's still carrying forward their addictive or alcoholic personality traits, that's not addressing the traumas behind those traits, that
Mm-hmm.
maybe is not even aware of those traits that are existing and causing direct effect on impact on their life and
Mm-hmm.
their relationships,
Mm-hmm.
how they're viewed, how they interact with the society around them. It's all, to me, it just is trauma that's left untended.
Yes.
Um, you
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely. Which brings that second point, about how you talked about addiction, if it's alcohol or substances, is a way of escaping and numbing out whatever it is that a person doesn't want to deal with, right?
right?
And one of the things that we do know is that's what addiction centers in. It's a form of escape. When I used to
Yeah,
work with youth that were in rehabs, I was asking one of the questions would be, well, why do you think you started to use? And, some of them would say out of curiosity, like, okay, the saying curiosity killed the cat, right? You're curious what it would be like. But
Yeah.
curiosity, not what kept you using, And so in the moment when you start looking at like a person's pattern of usage, is it around the times when things are really tense at home, right? Or is it around their way of coping a certain trauma that they went through. And so being able to, figure out why am I using? What is keeping me using? What am I escaping from? Because when that buzz, that high wears off, guess what? That trauma is still there, And so if left unaddressed, you will see it start to like seep into multiple areas of your life and impacting the person who you are, and the person who you possibly even want to become, right? So I think that, the fact that you brought that up and that was part of what your journey has been, and even, as you think about the relationship between addiction and a person's mental health, and I thought I heard you mention the word therapy in there, and so just knowing resources where you can go to, right? And if it's therapy, if it's a program, 12 steps, or whatever is going to work for a person, because everyone's recovery is going to look a little bit different.
Yeah. I initially had well, I had court ordered AA meetings.
Mhm.
And I AA to me is like religion. I'm not a religious person, but I understand its worth.
Mhm.
I would check out the AA meetings, I would participate, I would speak, but it just wasn't my cup of tea as far as what I needed.
Mhm.
Um, my journey has been more consistent with um, a life coach, therapist,
Mhm.
massage, you know what I mean? Acupuncture, like a culmination of all these different
Yeah.
holistic approaches, which I've found to be beneficial for me, like works for me. Um, Not one size fits all. It never, there's not, I can't stand one size fits all, like with companies or anything like that, because it's never true. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as one size fits all. Everyone is a unique individual. It's got to be a unique individual thing for a person to get what they need out of it.
Mhm.
And so I think like the recurring, well, what's interesting to me now is that I got to watch my dad's journey in his life play out,
Mhm.
and I'm a lot like him. So it's kind of like, do you remember those books, Choose Your Own Adventure?
Yes.
Okay. So Choose Your Own Adventure books, you start the subplot of a book, and then you get to a certain point, and then it's like, okay, now do you want to open the door to the house and go inside, or do
Yep.
you want to walk around the back of the house through the gate? And
Yep.
then based on what you chose, you had to flip to that page,
Page.
and
Yep.
the story would carry on from there, right?
Yep.
Well, I have one path played out in front of me for what happens if you do it that way.
Yes.
So I'm ever present and mindful of that knowledge and that experience with my dad,
Mhm.
and take it into consideration as I'm on my own path and my own journey.
Mhm.
And that's not to say that I'm gonna knock it out the park and be perfect or anything like that, but it just reminds me of certain things that he never addressed and how much happier his life would have been had he.
So good and so beautiful, which
Yeah.
reminds me of that third point that you talked about when you're talking about your father, about how you're saying he started his recovery, then stopped his recovery. And so I'm curious, what does it look like when a person stops their recovery, and how can they, if they choose, right, the choose your own adventure, if they
Yep.
choose to restart it again, what would you say to that person?
Well, I mean, take your handcuffs off. You know what I mean? Like let open the jail cell door. People put themselves in their own prisons and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
My dad couldn't drive in traffic without having anger management issues. My dad couldn't get through ordering food at a restaurant. There was this time where because I was trying to share with him what I was learning as I was going through what I was going through, right? And so we go to eat often, and the same thing kept happening to him over and over again. The waitress would walk up to the table, "Sir, can I take your order?" And he'd be like, "Yes, I would like a tuna sandwich on white bread, potato salad, tomato on the side, coffee with cream," right? Whatever it was. The waitress would be like, "Okay, what kind of bread did you want for the sandwich?" Like, this dude, you never saw someone get so stressed out over just the simple concept of ordering food. So he would wind up getting into these really awkward arguments with waitresses. I just told you exactly what I wanted. Well, you didn't listen to what I said? Say really snappy, mean-spirited type of stuff to the waitresses. I'm like, Dad, hold up. Check it out. These people have their way of doing their job, okay? And most of them you'll find, because I used to work in the food service industry, mostly what they're doing is they're trying to make sure that they don't mess up your order.
Right.
So next time we go to eat, rather than you jumping out there and putting every single thing that you want right off the bat in your first sentence, let them go down their checklist to make sure that they're giving you the best quality service they can give you, and see how that works.
So right? Good.
So we go to the restaurant, waitress comes up, "All right, sir, and what would you like to order?" And he like looked across the table at me. He's like, "I would like a tuna sandwich." And then he sat back and just, "Oh, okay. What kind of bread would you like on that?" "I would like the white bread." "Would you prefer the coleslaw or the potatoes?" And it went through the whole checklist, and everything went fine. Everything came out correct. And when the food got delivered, he was just laughing to himself. And I'm like, look at
that.
Make life easier for yourself.
Right.
And so, it's a simple analogy, but it really is like, it personifies how easy it can be to change your life, right? Just by changing your behaviors, changing your attitude, changing the way that you're approaching situation. Realizing,
golden nuggets.
No doubt, realizing that you have a choice. You can make a choice, right? I've also noticed as I'm getting older, what I've always considered to be like kind of slick, quick-witted, little, mindset that I have. It doesn't sound as good when I'm older. I can see very easily how I could, be conceived as like the grumpy old guy or whatever. So I just keep all that stuff in mind. I just keep it all in mind. You know what I'm saying? Like as I'm going along with my life, like you have a choice.
Yes.
You have a choice. Every day when you wake up, you have a choice.
Yes. So good, Joey. And I really wish people would remember that. You do have a choice. You might feel like you're powerless, but you do have a choice. You have a choice if you're going to be grumpy. You have a choice if you're going to be happy. No pun intended with the seven dwarfs. You have a choice how you want to show up in your recovery because it's your recovery and no one can walk the path for you except for you. And what also stands out to me in that story that you shared about your father, like there's an element of your father that was coachable and open, right? Maybe because you were the son, and there is that father-son dynamic. But I also feel that that is so important, not just recovery, but just with making changes in life, right? How open and how coachable is a person? And I feel like that is one of, the main tools, as a person is working in their recovery. So kudos and totally agree with that about you have the choice and the ability to make change.
I was the only person on the planet that could get that dude to suffer that type of situation.
So we're almost wrapping up, just a couple more questions. And so this one, you kind of already answered it, but I just want to ask it in case there's anything else that you want to add. So what advice would you give to someone who's currently struggling with addiction and is considering seeking help?
Life, in my opinion, is a precious gift. Now, that doesn't mean that it's easy,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't mean that it's all beautiful and everything inside of it is lovely and the journey just works out. It's not. But the beauty of life is the struggle, the beauty and the journey of what we overcome. And so I would just say to people that you owe it to yourself to give yourself a shot at living. People say living your best life, right? Well, that doesn't necessarily have to be an internet trend. Living your best life could be waking up early and getting up out of bed and going to work hard. Like, I find that service is of the utmost importance. And so, no matter where I go or what I do, I always try to find myself to some degree in service of others,
Mm-hmm.
because it is in service to others that we really can. I'll go back to it. We can have our ego death and let ourselves go and realize that there's so much more out there, that we're a part of this whole thing, but we aren't the whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The universe doesn't circle the earth. The earth is a part of the universe, right? We've learned this over time, the understanding of our placement in the universe. Well, it's like that with finding your placement in the
Mm-hmm.
world as well. Everything doesn't rotate around us, even though we're from that perspective. We can change our perspective to understand the part that we play in everything around us.
Right.
And so do yourself the favor, believe in yourself, give yourself a chance. It's not going to be easy. As a matter of fact, it's going to be quite the contrary. But on the other side is your family. On the other side is your friendships. On the other side is peace. And I think at the end of the day, everyone in the world is just out here trying to figure out how to get a little bit of peace.
Yes.
And so that starts with self-love. You can't truly love other people unless you love yourself.
Yes.
And being overtaken by addiction is there's nothing loving about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just say to people that start there, start simple, look deep inside, and try to remember love and peace. Try to remember love and peace, and then try to see yourself in that love and peace, and then try to give that gift to yourself, because that gift will emanate from you to all those around you. And then one day, 13 years later, you'll be able to wake up and have your head high and feel proud and be excited that you have a second daughter on the way and that you're a good enough man to do so.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Joey, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your time with us,
Absolutely.
today. Absolutely appreciated this conversation. So many golden nuggets and words of wisdom that you dropped. And my hope is for everyone that's listening, if you have ears to listen, that you'll catch what Joey has shared. And, wrapping up with love and peace and self-love, and addiction can be a dark, lonely struggle, but you don't have to go at it alone. And to find the light, to be able to start loving yourself again, and then emulating that light and love into the world. So thank you, Joey, once again for taking the time. And one last question, if there's any last thing that you want to share with our listeners today, um, final thoughts before we wrap up.
Yeah, once upon a time, my best friend was a massage therapist at this company, and I was still drinking and you know partying and being young and not very responsible. And my friend recommended that I apply for a job at said establishment, which I did. And I, showed up kind of a hot mess, still not really understanding how professional work clothes fit and the type of belts you should have, or shoes that you should wear, or any of that stuff. Work in progress. And I was fortunate enough to be sent to a training program where you were the head trainer, and speaking into what I was talking about earlier, people that saw things in me before I necessarily did. I believe, professionally speaking, that you were one of those people. And man, like, I worked for a high-end luxury jeweler in Las Vegas, one of the biggest in the United States of America. And Charity, I'm not trying to be a braggart, but I just want you to know that I'm doing pretty well. And I owe that to people believing in me. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Joey. And no doubt that you're doing really well. And I remember that training way back in the day, and you know, there was something special about you. And just to see it come to light, see it come to fruition, kind of follow your journey from afar has been so amazing, just to see you grow into the man and step into your potential and step into, the person who you've been called to be. And, you're a girl dad times two in a couple days. And that's
Girl dad.
huge, huge. Who would have thought that, all the years? But you're only going to continue leveling up in your life. And just thank you just for allowing me just to be a small part, of your journey that you're on. So all the
I
love
got
to
nothing but
you.
love for you, Charity.
Right back at you, Joey. Right back at you.
Anytime you call on me, I'll be there.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So thank you all for listening in, for tuning in. Joey Hinzo, aka Woes. Oh, you know what? Share really quickly how you got the nickname Woes, or the moniker Woes, and what that symbolizes in your life, in your recovery. I can't leave that out. Can't believe it. I asked that earlier. So share
Sure.
real quickly about the history of Woes.
Yeah, when I was an infant in the year of 1977, my father used to carry me around the house because I would cry a lot as a baby. And he would walk me through the house and say, "Woe is me. Woe is me. We're walking past the laundry machine. Woe is me. We're in the kitchen. Woe is me." And then as time went on, he shortened it and just started calling me Woes. So Woes has always been my nickname.
Mm-hmm.
Flash forward to when I got into hip hop and I started rapping, everyone had a rap name. So I just decided to stick with my nickname,
Woes.
Woes. And then time went further on, and then I realized, like, as the internet and everything was progressing, when people would if you put Woes in a Google search, the most horrible stuff in the world, Dow Jones woes, Africa suffers famine woes, like all this horrible stuff. And I'm like, geez. So MC, because people at my shows would be like, "Oh, what's up, MC Woes?" So I added MC because it would be easier for searchability.
Yeah.
So at MC Woes as opposed to just at Woes. But my actual name is Woes. Like, I consider it as much as my name is Joey because it was given to me in 1977 as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The MC part was just added for searchability on the internet.
All right. Well, Woes, Joey Hinzo, MC Woes, thank you once again
Hey-o.
for the time, and peace out. Have a great day.
Peace out. Talk.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And as a reminder, information provided in this podcast is not designed to diagnose, treat, or replace professional therapy. If you or someone you know can benefit from mental health therapy services, please reach out to a local provider in your immediate area.